Red Bull might give you wings, but it doesn't mean you can fly too close to the sun. We've all seen Red Bull energy drinks for sale. Maybe some of you have drunk them on their own, or as the infamous, well, in the UK at least, Vodbull, which is Red Bull and vodka, and it's very popular in nightclubs. But today I'm not going to talk to you about the positives and negatives of energy drinks and caffeine, but rather about the brand Red Bull and its association with extreme sports events and YouTube videos that are not for the faint-hearted. The energy drink was first created in 1984, but people only began talking about the brand in the 1980s. You might remember the Red Bull cars that were converted minis with a giant can of Red Bull on the back, and beautiful girls giving out free drinks for everybody to try. One of the first marketing tricks that they employed was to leave empty cans of Red Bull in nightclub bathrooms so that everybody would think that everyone was drinking this drink. Students were even hired to organise Red Bull parties where the energy drink flowed freely and everybody was going crazy for this taurine-based drink. People claim that taurine is actually bull semen, but rather than disgusting people, this made the drink even more popular. However, the brand soon stagnated. As we know, there are plenty of other energy drink brands, just like Monster with the green M. And it's when this happened that the owner, Dietrich Mateschitz, decided to look for another direction, and he chose extreme sports. Adrenaline junkies like the top BMX cyclists, base jumpers, cliff divers and free climbers were all struggling to get sponsors because, after all, who wants to sponsor someone who's putting their life at risk so often? Most companies don't want to pay for a huge event only for it to end with the air ambulances rushing in and everything closing down because, again, somebody died. But people love extreme sports, even if it's not actually taking part in them, at least watching them. And this is a clear gap in the market that Red Bull has managed to corner. In 2007, Red Bull created its own media empire. They film, edit and post content every day to many different channels across the world. And whenever they host an event, they run it, they have the filming rights and they post videos everywhere. Of course, this doesn't come cheaply. Red Bull spend 40% of their income just on marketing alone, but it's definitely working. In 2012, Red Bull was worth $4.25 billion, and I'm sure that since then, this figure has only gone on to rise. Do any of you remember watching the free fall jump where a man broke the sound barrier? Well, this happened in 2012. Felix Baumgartner jumped from outer space and he was filmed live as he broke the sound barrier. This Austrian man was watched by over 8 million people, and of course the Red Bull logo was plastered all over him. But what about these athletes? What's in it for them? As I said before, not many companies want to sponsor extreme sport events because they're high-risk activities. I personally am someone who loves extreme sports. I go kayaking, rock climbing and skiing whenever I can. And these are classed as extreme sports for insurance purposes, even though I'm sure we can think of some far more dangerous ones. But from my experience, whilst these sports are dangerous, you're actually far more aware of the dangers you face when you're doing them, because you know about the safety procedures that can be put in place, as well as having training. And before anybody attempts one of these stunts, they would have actually gone through a lot of training. The athletes that Red Bull sponsors are at the very top of their game. They're highly trained and they're highly skilled. So in some ways, Red Bull is giving them an opportunity. There weren't so many World Series to take part in before, but now Red Bull has over 600 yearly events, and they have 500 athletes that they sponsor in many different sports. Without Red Bull, there'd be far less events, far less notoriety, and far less people encouraged to get out and get active because they idolize the Red Bull athletes. The owner, Dietrich Mateschitz, takes full responsibility for the athletes that he sponsors. He organizes everything from A to Z in the event. And if you've ever watched a Red Bull video and know anything about the sport, you'll know that the athletes are always kitted out head to toe in the latest and best equipment. However, let's admit it, these videos would be a whole lot less sensational if you saw the safety ropes, the kayakers stood on the side on the bank with throw lines, the helicopters ready on call on the side of the ski slope, the nets hanging ready to catch the free rope climbers, and the other skydivers who jump just afterwards ready to attach themselves to their free fallers. And this is perhaps why Red Bull athletes die every year. In one way, we can say that yes, they are dying doing what they love, but also they're often competing or performing without the standard safety procedures that everybody else would use if they were doing the stunt. Because of this, I decided to search for more information about Red Bull athletes who died and what happened. This, as you would expect, was not so easy to find. In 2009, a very well-respected base jumper died when he jumped off the Sunrise building in Zurich. He had a parachute, but he missed his jump, and he face-planted the concrete below. In the same year, a skier died. He was trying to do a double backflip off a rock in the Dolomites, and it also ended very badly. These are just two examples of hundreds of extreme sports incidents that happen every year. But to what extent is Red Bull responsible, and how does the public feel about this? Well, some athletes and their families have criticised Red Bull for openly encouraging athletes to push the limits even further and further every time they compete. There is a clear lack of safety in some of the videos I have seen, and this is not something that should encourage people to want to take part. However, in this modern day and age, more and more people seem to be looking for that adrenaline kick that they just can't get anywhere else. And the public seems to understand. Frankly, reactions are not affecting the brand in any way, shape or form. Of course, the videos of an athlete failing at their stunt, or even worse, are never published anyway. So there's less awareness of what happens when things go wrong. But people are actually very accepting of the fact that it is an extreme sport, so we already know it's dangerous. So we're not surprised that somebody dies doing it. And at the end of the day, people are taking their lives into their own hands. Red Bull isn't holding a gun to them, telling them jump off that 5-story building now. Or maybe 50-story would be a bit more accurate. It seems to me that Red Bull has spotted a gap in the market, but perhaps they should sometimes consider putting safety on, just like I do when I go kayaking or climbing and decide it's time to attempt going down that waterfall. Thank you.